Supercars. Hypercars. Whatever you want to call them, everyone has heard of Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti, and McLaren. But guess what? There are a ton of supercars that you have never heard about. And thanks to this video, you can learn about them and impress your friends. Stick around, because we're about to show you 10 insane supercars that no one has ever heard of. And if you're new here, I'm the Squid, this is Ideal Media. Go ahead and hit subscribe down below because we're gonna bring you this kind of content pretty much every other day. And without further ado, let's go. Now, up first, we have a car company you might have heard of recently, with their latest hypercar setting some somewhat fishy land speed records.
Smells like fish in here.
But what you might not be familiar with is the car that got SSC started, the SSC Ultimate Aero. Now, while the SSC Ultimate Aero definitely looked like a kit car Lamborghini from the outside, with its billionaire doors and a rear end that looks a lot like the Lamborghini Diablo SV. Luckily, like my mom always says, it's what's inside that counts. Anyway, the inside of the Ultimate Aero was a heart of pure evil. The beating heart of a hypercar before hypercars were really even a thing. Now, SSC at the time claimed that the Ultimate Aero was created for drivers, and that's why it lacked features like ABS, traction control, and any other real techno-nanny devices. So essentially, the SSC Ultimate Aero was a Dodge Viper, an American supercar made to kill you. And sadly, like the Viper, it had a pretty short production run. And thanks to a neck-snapping 1,287 horsepower, the Ultimate Aero even held a Guinness World Record for fastest production car by going 256 miles per hour out of the gate. A record it held for a while until it got passed up by the faster Bugatti Veyron Supersport. But for the price of that Veyron, you could buy 2 of the Ultimate Aeros. Now, from the folks who made an Ideal Media fan favorite, the Icona Hypersport, comes the next supercar on our list, the FISKER Supersport from W Motors. Now, the FISKER is actually named after a mythological wolf, and the FISKER Supersport is pretty much a wolf dressed in wolf's clothing. I mean, the thing looks like a friggin' wolf. But don't be fooled by its very immature and outlandish look-at-me design language. The FISKER is a proper hypercar that is fitting of being named after a mythological wolf. And for most of you watching this, it will remain mythological with its 7-figure price tag of $2 million. But for those lucky enough to have that much scratch, you can spend $2 million, step on the skinny pedal, and take this thing all the way up to 250 miles per hour. Sporting a 0 to 60 kilometer time of 2.8 seconds? Yeah, you get what you pay for with the FISKER. All of this insane performance is coming to you from an 800 horsepower flat 6 rough engine that itself is based on a Porsche design. All right, you got $2 million in your pocket, you're sold, you want one of these? You want one of the first ones to come out of the line? Well, too bad, sucker. They only made 10 launch edition FISKERs, and one rich bastard bought 5 of them. Some dude spent $10 million on these already, which I guess he didn't want to just have one and be a lone wolf, so he got a wolf pack. Now, if 10 examples of a supercar is a little too common for you, then maybe the ultra rare Force One V10 is a car you might want to consider. The Force One V10 definitely sounds like something that comes out of Star Wars, and its design kind of mimics something like a squinting catfish. But don't be fooled, the VLF Force One V10 is a proper badass American supercar. Now, who is VLF, you ask? It's kind of the dream team of automotive car dudes. Combine HENRIK FISKER, designer of the failed but still pretty beautiful FISKER Karma, as well as the Aston Martin DB9, and the never going down in value BMW Z8. You take him, you get him teamed up with Bob Lutz, and you get a dream team that's first idea was to replace the boring hybrid engine of the Karma with a Corvette engine. And that alone should tell you that this is pretty much a match made in heaven. All this sounds almost too good to be true, and it almost is. Despite being such an amazing piece of American brawn and ingenuity, the Force One V10 really never got off the ground. Reportedly, only 5 examples were ever made, which means if you're into super rare supercars, this might be one of the ones you want to look at. Just, bring your checkbook because they're going for about $300,000 today. Now, what's the best thing to come out of Russia since bottles of Stoli? Well, a supercar, of course. That's why it's in this video. And the one we're going to be talking about is the Marussia B2. Now, one place where a lot of really good ideas come from is from a bottle of vodka. So fittingly, a lot of good ideas come out of Russia. And the Marussia B2 was the first supercar dreamt up over a plate of pierogi. Buyers of the Marussia B2 had a choice of two Cosworth engines, a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V6 or a 2.8 liter turbo 6. I think it's pretty clear which one of those is the better option. Now you combine that engine with the modest 2,400 pound weight, and this monstrous machina goes from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Now Marussia seemed like they had a surefire hit on their hands when they launched this thing in 2010 with a price tag of only around $130,000. It was kind of a supercar bargain, but like a lot of the cars on this list, dreams weren't totally realized. Only a few Marussia B2s ever hit the streets, and the company went belly up a few years later. Now up next is our award for supercar with the longest name. And we are talking about the Fittipaldi Motors EF7 Vision Gran Turismo by Pininfarina. Now, for the rest of this video, we'll keep it simple and just call it the EF7. Now, speaking of names, not many cars are named after a man. Oh wait, Ford. There's like a bazillion cars named after a man. Never mind that. Brazilian race car driver Emerson Fittipaldi wanted to recreate the race car experience for noobs with deep pockets. Sorry, I meant to say wealthy amateur racers. To do this, he turned to the iconic Pininfarina for the design, and they were recently let go by Ferrari, so they were all too happy to oblige. Pininfarina says the design is inspired by nature, and the front end is that of a shark. And sharks are badass, so the EF7 is badass, right? Now for the carbon chassis, they went with the German design firm HWA. If you're not familiar with them, they're the team responsible for the Porsche 919 hybrid streetcar prototype. With their ingenuity, they were able to make the EF7 weigh only 2,200 pounds. What's even better? It's powered by a 4.8 liter naturally aspirated V8 that pumps out 592 horsepower. Now, what makes the EF7 really special is each car purchased comes with a driving lesson from Fittipaldi himself, which even if the car is 1.5 million bucks, it sounds like kind of a deal to get that. I know what you're thinking. I don't have 1.5 million bucks. I can't buy this car. Well, good news. Neither can anyone else. They were supposed to go into production in 2018, but no one's heard anything since. And today, the only way anyone can drive the car of Emerson's dreams is actually in the video game Gran Turismo. Some rich guys have money to burn and others have smoking hot cars. Well, what if you want both? Well, the Zenvo ST1 is here to cater to that specific client. It's a classic story. A rich guy wants a unique supercar, so he just starts his own company from scratch, just to make his car. Sometimes it's a story with a happy ending like Pagani. And sometimes you get Zenvo. Zenvo Automotive was established in Denmark by wacky rich guy Troels Vollertsen. Now, Zenvo's first effort, the ST1, went into production in 2009, and its 1,100 horsepower put the Zenvo ST1 at the extreme high end of supercar power at the time. As for how it looks, it kind of represents a really angry Mustang that might be from the fires of hell. And it actually might be a real-life demon, seeing as how the Zenvo ST1 caught on fire during a Top Gear taping. And then the non-combustible ST1 that they tested later on turned in a lap time slower than the BMW M5. It's probably a good thing that only 15 of these monstrosities were ever made, and only 3 of them ever ended up in the United States. Which, who bought such a slow machine if it was $1 million brand new here in the States?
Shut up and take my money!
Now, a common problem amongst the rich is pulling up to the tennis courts and the douchebag you're playing against has the same car as you. If that's your problem, then the Icona Vulcano might be the car for you. Now, just when you thought things couldn't get more extreme with supercars, along comes the titanium-coated Icona Vulcano, with a jaw-dropping $2.8 million price tag, meaning the only person that could afford this probably bought a lot of GameStop stock. This is perfect for the rich dude who thinks Lambos are too ordinary. But don't tell the owner that the engine is actually from a Corvette ZR1. So much for being truly unique. Now, sorry to say, unless this car is actually sitting in your driveway, you're kinda SOL, buddy. Icona only made one Vulcano, and it took them 10,000 man-hours to make. And it's already been purchased, so you can't have it. Now, let's move on to the MOSLER MT900 and yet another story of a rich dude starting his own car company. Now, no one purchased a MOSLER MT900 because of its look. I'm not saying they're ugly, they're just kind of meh. I mean, you could be driving a Lambo or a Ford GT or any other beautiful supercar. No, people bought a MOSLER MT900 because they love driving. At least I hope that's the reason, because I can't really see any other reason to buy one. Hedge fund managers like Warren Mosler may know how to make money, but they're also pretty good at pissing it away. especially when it comes to building these supercars. MOSLER had some good ideas. He had a carbon fiber frame, Corvette LS engine, and a Porsche transmission. The MT900 was even priced reasonably under 200,000 bucks and did 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, you spent 200,000 bucks and you had to look at the thing. And maybe it's kind of the face only a mother could love. Just a few dozen MT900s were sold, and the company said, "See you later, Space Cowboy," in 2013. All right, bonus points if you can guess where our next supercar is coming from. The Aranera Husaria. We've looked at cars from Russia, Brazil, pretty much all over. Now let's take a trip to Poland for our next ride. And let me translate that tongue twister of a name. Aranera is, of course, the company, and the Husaria is named after the Polish Hussar Cavalry Division. Sadly, none of that cavalry came to save this supercar. Sure, this track-tuned GT3 monster puts out plenty of ponies, thanks to a mid-mounted LS7 V8. But the vow of a street-legal version of the Husaria remains vaporwave still after 5 years, meaning all the promises of this supercar kind of amounted to nothing less than fertilizer. Crazy or brilliant? You decide if the Tramontana, our last supercar on this list, is a good idea or a good example of good engineers doing bad things. The absolutely insane Tramontana comes from Spain and looks like a cross between something like a jet fighter and a Can-Am Spider. There's even an open-top version that looks like an F1 car built for two. How romantic. Now, it's not just insanely weird to look at, it's also $600,000 and comes with either a V10 or a V12 that make around 700 horsepower, which is crazy. But yeah, crazy like a fox, because they sell a dozen of these every year. Well, there you have it. 10 weird, extreme, rare, unfinished supercars you may have never heard of. Further proving that there is a supercar on this planet for everyone that can afford them. What was your favorite supercar on this list? And what's an obscure supercar that we didn't talk about that you would like to see a video about? Let us know down below. And while you're down there, feel free to give us a like if you liked it, and give us a subscribe if you like Ideal Media, because we're gonna keep bringing you content like this so that you and we can live the ideal lifestyle.